The gala at the glass-walled Sterling atrium was meant to be the crowning achievement for Evander Sterling. For 6 years, he had been the face of next-gen bio, the man the media called the architect of life. He stood at the center of the room, adjusting the heavy gold watch on his wrist, surrounded by flashing cameras. He looked like a man who owned the future. But as the heavy glass doors swung open, the room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lyra Solari walked in. She didn't have an invitation, but she had something better, the truth. She was dressed in a sleek, structured emerald suit that stood out against the sea of black tuxedos, her natural hair styled in a sharp, modern taper. "Evander, who is that?" Serafina asked, clutching her diamond necklace. "She's staring at you like she knows where the bodies are buried." "Just an old lab technician with a grudge," Evander muttered, his face turning a sickly shade of gray as he nearly dropped his digital guest list. But Lyra wasn't there for him. She was looking for the man standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, Cassian Valerius. He was the Vulture of Biotech, a billionaire who didn't invest in stories, he invested in raw data. Evander had spent months trying to convince Cassian that his latest cellular serum was a solo breakthrough. Cassian didn't wait for an introduction. He walked straight past the security detail and stopped inches from Lyra. "Dr. Solari," Dr. Sedline, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "I've been looking for the person who actually sequenced the Primrose Strain. My analysts tell me it wasn't the man whose name is on the building. Tonight, the man who locked his wife out of her own laboratory is about to find out that some secrets are impossible to bury, and it all starts with one meeting that is about to cost him everything. Do you think Lyra should take back her company or burn it all down? Let me know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button to see the moment the billionaire exposes the truth." 6 years ago, the world of next-gen bio didn't exist in a glass atrium. It lived in a windowless basement-level lab in the university's annex. Lyra Solari lived there, her life measured in pipette tips and the rhythmic hum of the centrifuge. She was the one who saw the patterns in the genetic noise, the one who realized that cellular decay wasn't inevitable. It was a coding error. Evander was there too, but he wasn't looking at the data. He was looking at the clock and the mounting stack of past-due bills on the corner desk. "The board is breathing down my neck, Lyra," he'd said, pacing the small space while she worked. "If we don't show a viable breakthrough by the end of the month, they're pulling the seed funding. We'll be out on the street." Lyra didn't look up from the microscope. Her natural hair was tied back with a simple band, her lab coat stained with chemicals. "I'm close, Evander. The Primrose sequence is stabilizing, but it needs testing. It needs time." "We don't have time," he snapped, then softened his voice, stepping behind her and placing his hands on her shoulders. "We're a team, remember? My vision, your mind. Together, we're going to change the world." He'd kissed the top of her head, and Lyra believed him. She believed that the "we" meant they were building a future together, not just a company. But a week later, she walked into the lab to find Evander holding a conference call with the university's primary donors. He wasn't talking about their work. He was talking about his discovery, his hypotheses, and his late nights. When she tried to enter the room, he simply held up a hand, silencing her without even looking her way. In that moment, the lab she had practically slept in for 3 years suddenly felt like someone else's property. The success of the Primrose Strain didn't just change their bank account, it changed the very air Lyra breathed. Suddenly, the basement lab was replaced by a 30-story spire of glass and steel, the new headquarters of next-gen bio. But as the building went up, Lyra felt herself being pushed down. "You're the heart of this company, Lyra," Evander told her, handing her a new set of legal documents in their designer-decorated living room. "But the investors need to see me as the face. It's about branding. If the CEO is also the lead scientist, the stock price triples." He wasn't asking, he was telling. He had hired a team of high-priced lawyers to restructure her role. She was no longer a co-founder, she was a technical consultant with restricted access. When she tried to log into the main server to check the long-term stability of the serum, the screen flashed red. Access denied. "It's for security, babe," Evander said, not looking up from his phone as he scrolled through a list of gala invitations. "We have to protect the IP, even from ourselves." The IP was her life's work. The security was a cage. While Evander spent his days being interviewed by Fortune and Wired, Lyra was relegated to a secondary lab where the equipment was always on backorder and her emails to the board were mysteriously lost. She watched from the sidelines as he married her, not for love, but to legally bind her silence under the umbrella of marital property. He thought he had locked the door and thrown away the key. He didn't realize that Lyra didn't need a key. She knew exactly how the lock was built. The end of the marriage didn't happen with a scream. It happened with a click of a mouse. It was 3 a.m. when Lyra, using an old administrative backdoor she'd coded during the startup days, finally bypassed the security firewall of Next-Gen Bio. She wasn't looking for hidden bank accounts or evidence of affairs. She was looking for the patent filing for the Primrose Strain, the genetic miracle she had birthed in a windowless basement. When the document finally loaded, the blue light of the screen drained the color from her face. Her name wasn't there, not as lead scientist, not even as a contributor. The patent listed a single inventor, Evander Sterling. She sat in the dark for hours, the silence of their luxury penthouse feeling like a tomb. When Evander walked into the kitchen the next morning, smelling of expensive soap and unearned confidence, she didn't even look up from her tablet. "You scrubbed me out, Evander," she said, her voice a low, dangerous vibration. "It was a board decision, Lyra. They wanted a clean filing. Having a spouse listed creates complex community property issues for future acquisitions. It's better this way, for us. There is no us in this filing. There is only your ego and my stolen life. Don't be emotional," he snapped, his voice hardening. "You live in a $50 million home because of my branding. You wear diamonds because I know how to sell. Now go back to the lab and keep working on the stabilization. We have a launch in 6 months." Lyra stood up, her silhouette sharp against the sunrise. "I'm not going back to the lab, Evander, and I'm not staying in this house." "You can't leave," he laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You signed the non-compete. You signed the ironclad NDA. If you walk with nothing. You'll be a ghost in the industry." "Then I'll be a ghost," Lyra said, her voice steady as a surgeon's hand. "But even ghosts can haunt a house until it falls." The legal firm of Hardin and Associates was built on the 50th floor, designed to make clients feel small before they even sat down. Lyra sat across from a woman whose suit probably cost more than Lyra's first 3 years of lab equipment. "The situation is grim, Dr. Solari," the lawyer said, sliding a thick stack of papers across the desk. "Evander didn't just file the patents in his name. He tied your employment contract to your marriage certificate. If you divorce him, you forfeit your stock options. If you sue for the IP, he triggers a non-compete that bars you from any biotech lab for a decade." Lyra looked at the documents. It was a perfect legal perimeter. Evander had spent 6 years building a wall around her brilliance, and now he was using it to bury her. "He's offering a lifestyle settlement," the lawyer continued, a modest monthly stipend, the townhouse, and a gag order. In exchange, you walk away and never mention next-gen bio again. Lyra felt the heat rising in her chest, but she forced her breathing to slow. She looked at the signature line. Then she looked at the miscellaneous provisions in the addendum. Evander was so obsessed with the face of the company that he hadn't actually read the technical descriptions of how the Primrose Strain was maintained. "I'll sign," said Lyra, "but I want one small change to Section 12, a technical oversight clause. If the serum ever requires a resequencing due to environmental mutation, I want the right of refusal for the consultancy." The lawyer frowned. "That sounds like more work for you. Why would you want that?" "Because science is unpredictable," Lyra replied, her voice smooth. "And I don't want his incompetent team blowing up the city if my formula shifts." Evander's team didn't even consult him. To them, it looked like Lyra was begging for a job. They called it a pathetic attempt to stay relevant and added the clause. They didn't realize they were handing her the detonator to his entire empire.
For 6 years, Lyra Solari became a ghost in the biotech world. While Evander's face was plastered on billboards from San Francisco to Zurich, Lyra moved into a quiet, repurposed warehouse in the industrial district. She didn't want the fame, she wanted the foundation. She spent those years perfecting the Primrose Strain in ways Evander's team couldn't dream of. While his scientists were busy trying to make the serum more marketable, Lyra was making it more resilient. She knew the flaw in the original batch, a genetic drift that would eventually cause the serum to lose its efficacy. It was a ticking clock, and she was the only one who knew how to reset it. Meanwhile, Next-Gen Bio was becoming a behemoth. Evander had married Serafina, a woman who looked perfect on a red carpet and never asked to see the data sheets. But the company's burn rate was astronomical. To maintain his lifestyle, Evander needed more than just hype. He needed a massive infusion of capital to survive the upcoming IPO. Enter Cassian Valerius. Cassian was known as the Vulture of Biotech. He didn't care for Evander's charismatic speeches or the sleek design of the headquarters. He was a man who looked at DNA as a language, and he knew someone had written the Primrose Strain with a much more sophisticated hand than the man claiming to be its author. 3 days before the anniversary gala, Cassian had secretly visited Lyra's warehouse. He didn't just see a lab, he saw the future. He realized that the technical oversight clause in Lyra's divorce settlement was a masterstroke. By investing in Next-Gen Bio, he wasn't just fueling Evander's ego, he was triggering the very capital event that would put Lyra back in the driver's seat. The glass atrium of the Sterling building was a masterpiece of transparency, a cruel irony considering the layers of lies it housed. Evander stood at the center of the room, his white tie tuxedo glowing under the recessed lights, his laughter a perfect practiced pitch. But as the heavy doors at the far end of the hall swung open, his voice died in his throat. Lyra Solari didn't creep into the room, she commanded it. In her emerald green suit, she looked like a precision instrument in a room full of ornaments. He abandoned Serafina mid-sentence, his boots clicking frantically against the polished stone as he tried to intercept Lyra before she reached the VIP circle. "Lyra, what is this?" he hissed, his face inches from hers. "You're violating the terms of the settlement. You weren't supposed to be within 5 blocks of this building." "The building is made of glass, Evander," she said, her voice cool and carrying. "I thought you wanted everyone to see exactly how you operate." She didn't wait for his reply. She stepped around him, moving toward Cassian Valerius. The billionaire was watching the exchange with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a chemical reaction. "Mr. Valerius," Evander stammered, sliding into the space between them, "I'm so sorry for the interruption. This is an old associate. She's had some personal difficulties adjusting to the firm's growth." "Growth is rarely painless, Mr. Sterling," Cassian said, his voice a low rumble. He didn't look at Evander. He reached out and shook Lyra's hand instead. Dr. Solari, I've been analyzing the stability reports you sent over. It seems the Primrose Strain has developed a rather expensive mutation. Evander's breath hitched. He looked between the two of them, the sweat finally breaking through his expensive foundation. Reports? Evander asked, his voice cracking. What reports? I'm the CEO. I see everything that leaves this lab. You see what you want to see, Evander, Lyra replied, her eyes sharp and unforgiving. But the data sees the truth. The gala's jazz band continued to play, but for Evander, the music had turned into a screeching alarm. He grabbed Lyra's elbow, his grip too tight, and pulled her toward a secluded alcove behind a decorative wall of living moss. What do you want, Lyra? He hissed, his eyes darting around to see if Serafina or the press were watching. You want more money? Fine, I'll double the stipend, I'll triple it. Just get out of here before you tank the IPO. Lyra looked down at his hand on her arm until he slowly, shakily let go. She adjusted the cuff of her emerald suit, her expression one of mild disgust. You think this is about a stipend, Evander? She asked. You think I spent 6 years in a warehouse because I wanted a bigger allowance? I made you, he shouted, then immediately dropped his voice to a whisper. I gave you a platform. No one would have looked at your data if it wasn't for my name. You were a ghost until I gave you a body. And you were a salesman who had nothing to sell until you stole my life, she countered. At that moment, Serafina appeared, her shimmering pink gown rustling. She looked at Lyra's sharp suit and then at Evander's panicked, sweating face. Her suspicion was a physical thing, sharp as a diamond. Evander, the investors are asking about the Primrose stabilization delay, she said, her voice laced with cold doubt. And who is this associate? You're acting like she's the one holding the keys to the vault. Evander tried to laugh, but it was an oily, desperate sound. Nothing, darling, just a minor technical disagreement. Dr. Solari was just leaving. Actually, said Lyra, turning toward the main hall where the large presentation screens were beginning to glow. I think the party is just getting started. The lights in the atrium dimmed, replaced by the cool, sterile glow of the massive LED screens lining the walls. The Next-Gen Bio logo pulsed like a heartbeat, and the crowd, a collection of the world's most powerful investors, fell into an expectant silence. Evander took the stage, the sweat on his brow now hidden by the expertly placed stage lights. He looked every bit the visionary leader, his voice projecting a confidence that was entirely hollow. Tonight we don't just launch a product, he announced, his arms wide. We launch a new era of human resilience. The Primrose Strain is no longer a dream. It is a reality. And as we move toward our IPO, we guarantee a stability rate of 99%. From the back of the room, near the shadows of the glass pillars, Lyra held a small, unmarked tablet. Her thumb hovered over a single command. Beside her, Cassian Valerius watched the screen, his arms crossed. The data you gave me, Dr. Solari? If it's true, his 99% is about to become a 0, he whispered. It's not just true, Lyra replied. It's inevitable. She tapped the screen. On the massive display behind Evander, the sleep marketing animation suddenly glitched. The golden double helix of the Primrose Strain began to turn a sickly, vibrating violet. The 99% stability text flickered and was replaced by a cascading waterfall of raw, unencrypted code. The audience gasped. Evander spun around, his mouth hanging open as he stared at the data. It wasn't just gibberish, it was a forensic history of the serum. At the bottom of the screen, in a font that was impossible to miss, appeared the original time-stamped logs from 6 years ago. Lead scientist, Dr. Lyra Solari. Primary investigator, Dr. Lyra Solari. Patent data integrity compromised. Evander's face, captured by the stage cameras and projected 10 feet high, looked like a man watching his own execution in real time. The silence in the atrium was more deafening than the gasps that preceded it. Evander stood frozen on stage, the violet light of the compromised data reflecting off his pale, sweating skin. He looked toward the tech booth, screaming for them to cut the feed, but the screens remained locked. Cassian Valerius stepped out from the shadows of the glass pillars and began to walk toward the stage. His footsteps echoed like a judge entering a courtroom. "Mr. Sterling," Cassian's voice boomed through the house speakers, overriding the panicked murmurs of the crowd. "I believe you mentioned a 99% stability rate. My systems are currently showing a total systemic collapse of your IP integrity." "It's a glitch," Evander shouted, his voice cracking. "A disgruntled ex-employee hacked the server. We'll have it fixed by morning." "It's not a glitch, Evander," Cassian countered, reaching the edge of the stage. "It's a trigger. Because you failed to maintain the technical stability of the Primrose Strain, you have officially activated the oversight clause in your primary licensing agreement." Cassian turned to face the audience, holding up his own digital tablet. "As the lead investor, I am exercising my right to reassign the intellectual property to the original architect. Effective immediately, Next Gen Bio is being placed into receivership. Evander Sterling is removed as CEO." The crowd erupted. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing like a storm around the stage. Serafina didn't even look back as she pushed through the crowd toward the exit, her shimmering pink gown a blur of retreating vanity. Evander collapsed into the speaker's podium, his empire turning to ash in the time it took to breathe. He looked down at Lyra, who was standing at the foot of the stage. She wasn't angry, she wasn't gloating. She simply looked at him with the cold, detached gaze of a scientist who had successfully finished a long, difficult experiment. The chaos of the atrium began to fade into a hum as security cleared the floor, leaving only the wreckage of Evander's vanity and the quiet strength of the woman he had tried to erase. Evander climbed down from the stage, his movements jerky like a puppet with cut strings. He stopped in front of Lyra, his face a mask of disbelief. "You destroyed it," he whispered, his voice trembling. 6 years of building. For what? To be the queen of a graveyard? "I didn't destroy it, Evander," Lyra replied, her voice echoing in the vast glass space. "I reclaimed it. The Phoenix Serum was never yours to sell. It was mine to give to the world. And tomorrow, the patents will be transferred to a public trust." Cassian Valerius stepped forward, the light of the dying gala glinting off his silver hair. He looked at Lyra with a respect that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with her mind. "The board has already voted, Dr. Solari," Cassian said. "The company is yours, and I'd like to be your first partner on your terms this time." He leaned in front of the remaining cameras and the shell-shocked Evander, he pressed a soft, lingering kiss to Lyra's hand, a gesture of total alliance and public validation. It wasn't just a kiss, it was the final seal on Evander's coffin. Lyra turned and walked toward the grand glass doors. She didn't look back at the man she once loved, nor at the building that bore his name. She walked out into the cool evening air, the city lights reflecting off her emerald suit like a promise of a new dawn. Evander thought he could steal the spark and keep the fire. He forgot that the woman who knows how to build the engine is the only one who knows how to make it run. What would you do if you found out your partner was stealing your success? Would you walk away quietly, or would you set a trap like Lyra? Tell me your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice and ultimate revenge.